All of us are here for a big reason. I don't think that's an opinion. I think it's our responsibility to identify what that is and lean in. And I encourage everybody who's not in alignment or is not waking up excited for the most part on a day-to-day basis, but you feel that tug at your heart, your soul, there's something there that you've been denying. You have to cultivate 20 seconds of courage and lean into it and explore it and just see where it goes. Because like I said a couple times on the show, if it's not the thing, it'll be a thing that leads to the thing. But most likely doors will open up, opportunities will present themselves, and you'll become a better person in the process. But on the flip side, if you don't lean in, you will regret it for the rest of your life.
Welcome, my guest, Craig Siegel. Craig is a value-based, high-energy global keynote speaker and rising thought leader, as featured an entrepreneur and endorsed by some of the world's most known celebrities, entertainers, athletes, entrepreneurs, such as Ed Mylett, Andy Grammer, Marie Forleo, Tom Bilyeu, and Eric Thomas, and more. Craig is born and raised New Yorker who from a young age always knew that he was meant for more, but wasn't able to put it all together. When the pandemic hit, Craig felt spiritually guided. He left his lucrative and comfortable job on Wall Street and went all in on his new passion and purpose to help people upgrade their mindsets and live their fullest potential. Craig's unique combination of energy, motivation, inspiration, charisma, and business success has led to the rise of cultivating lasting symphony, otherwise known as CLS, a contagious, never-seen-before explosion that has impacted millions of lives worldwide. Now he releases his newest book, The Reinvention Formula: How to Unlock a Bulletproof Mindset to Upgrade Your Life. All right, welcome back to another episode on Passion, Love, Pursuit podcast. I have the honor of bringing on another returning guest, Craig Siegel, back to the show. Most importantly, I am absolutely so pumped to bring you back on because of your new book that is dropping August 15th that I'm so freaking excited for. And I'm just like, honestly, congratulations getting a book deal, getting your first book out to the world. And the book topic is truly what you have showcased to us in the last few years and what you've built through your life, honestly, and your whole experiences. I'm sure it's not like just a one-time event. So I'm just so excited to unpack this and go deeper with you than we did in our previous episode about 2 years ago, actually, 2 years ago this time of the year as we're recording now. So welcome back, Craig. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't believe that was 2 years ago. Time really flies, but there's so much to catch up on. Thank you for the beautiful words. Every time I get to connect with you, it's magic. Let's have some fun. Let's get nuts.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So yeah, 2 years, my goodness. And I know so much has evolved since then. And I was pretty much talking to you almost at the top of the time you created CLS, which is a play on your initials. We dived into your story in the previous episode, of course, so that will be in the show notes just so people could hear, the backstory and what has brought you here. But let's just start really of what has really happened in the last 2 years and what has been the hardest thing you have gone through in building your personal brand or the Craig Siegel we see today.
What a great question. It's interesting because this kind of feels like a sequel, right? And maybe it'll be a trilogy when we speak 2 years after this. So much has happened. Where do I even begin? So if I spoke to you, it sounds about right, kind of towards the beginning when I had just leaned into CLS. I was reinventing myself. I realized that this was my assignment, my calling. I was going all in. Over the last 2 years, it just exploded. I'm so humbled to say that. The personal brand, the podcast is huge, as you know, some of the best guests on the world, sponsorships. We obviously just got the record book deal, which I'm super ecstatic about. Communities, traveling all over the world. I'll be in Toronto next week. But also got engaged since we last spoke. We just got a puppy, which is a full-time job. So when I say reinvention, I don't just mean a career. I mean my life. So much to catch up on. It feels like I'm going 100 miles an hour. And it's interesting because when you're going at this type of speed, like you want to be conscious to take a minute, take it in and celebrate milestones and just be mindful, right? Because that's really the portal to expansion. And I do my best to be conscious and take moments for that. but we just have so much going on and it keeps getting busier. But it's not overwhelm, it's abundance. Like, let's be real. This is what I asked for. This is what I wanted. So I'm here for all of it. But just so much in a nutshell in every single area of life.
Yeah. I mean, it's so true. Like, you really have just evolved in every single area, like just in getting into the speaking. I don't know if you, before entering this, if you want to say going really hard in the personal development space, did you have any experience with speaking on stages as you do now?
No, I'd never spoken on it. In fact, I was probably a little shy or insecure. But I mean, I had my own business, as you know, on Wall Street. And one thing that I did like when I look back at the time, one of my favorite moments when I would come in the mornings and I would have a team meeting and I would rally the troops and I would get them fired up. And I was able to take bits and pieces of that and translate them into other things like coaching and speaking and stuff like that. But in a nutshell, no. I didn't have any experience that I could refer back to give me confidence when it came to speaking.
Yeah. Okay. So talking about you, which is the name of your new book, the Reinvention Formula. So you are proof that you actually reinvented yourself. You went from a career, I believe it's 13 years in the stock market, and then completely entering this new personal development space where you became a speaker, podcaster, and all the things, right? You have many avenues of things, which is really impressive. But I'm just curious, were there clues? Like, I know your story, as actually myself, is discovering really what you were made to do during COVID, when you were actually able to silence and create the time and space to go within and really check in, like, what do I feel, what do I want to create, and how am I living my life, which was a great reflection. But were there clues that led you to discovering your passion and purpose? Like, I know you speak heavily, you always loved personal development. So were there clues that you were like piecing together to guide you the direction you headed?
So interesting. Like, if you were to ask my best friend, my brother, my only sibling, he would probably tell you like the writing was on the wall because I've been obsessed with personal development, as you just attested to. And I always had like an energetic, charismatic personality with my friends and stuff like that. And I married the two. But if I'm being honest with you, like, I never thought that personal development would be my career or my livelihood. It was just a resource for me to better myself, to continuously grow and evolve and expand, and then use that in other areas like Wall Street and, not really running to running all these marathons at pretty impressive times. I didn't have an indication that this is what I was going to lean into full time at all. But that being said, it was something that I was really, really, really into and passionate about. And now the more authentic I show up, like the weirdness, the strangeness, some of my catchphrases and stuff like that, like I always had that. I just finally decided to showcase it to the world, and I married that with my love for personal development. But if you asked me like 6 years ago, do I think I would step into this space, or I would have a personal brand, or have a huge following, or be the next Tony Robbins, whatever the case may be, I don't think so. I don't think I necessarily saw that happening.
Yeah, I know. I think it's, when you start moving in a direction, then you start seeing the clues, right? Like, when you start stepping forward and like step by step, you kind of like, oh, that makes sense now, So when you started to move into this space, did you, again, being so new at it, and this is talking to anybody listening right now that wants to step into something new, but of course, they feel the imposter syndrome, they feel the doubts creep in. I mean, we all have it. I don't think anybody is immune to that. So when you started stepping in this new space, did you seek counsel? Did you join masterminds? Did you talk to people that have already been in this space? Did you start going to events, reading books? Like, what was your path? Like, what would you recommend to somebody starting into a new space to, start walking towards that direction seamlessly?
Yes, I love it. And just to go backwards for a second, like with the last question, I'm a big believer in that clarity follows action. And two things that your listeners and audience can let go of today, which I think will be very helpful, because a lot of people talk about what you need to add, but let's talk about what you can let go of, right? That is the need to be perfect and waiting for the right time. I think both of those are nonsense. And if you just get in the damn arena and start leaning in, clarity will begin to come to you. And you know what? If it's not the thing, most likely it'll be the thing that leads to the thing. but you'll never know that unless you get involved. So you don't have to have all the answers. You just need that 20 seconds of courage and then to lean in. In regards to when I first started, I got a lot of indirect mentorship from what I saw from people that were doing stuff that I would like to do. And just to be clear, like I'm carving my own path, but there's bits and pieces of things that people did that I resonated with. Like for example, when I first started, one cat style that I really admired and I thought he was doing it in a cool way, he was very humble, was Ed Mylett. I just liked his
Love him.
style. And then there were other people like just reading different books and seeing like online coaches. I never wanted to just be a coach. Like that was never meant. That was one lane in the 10-lane highway. But I saw people that were doing stuff like that and I just took what I liked. I left the rest and I started to kind of create myself like a piece of clay on what I wanted this to be. And then one thing that I did was I connected with Dave Meltzer early on in the journey on social media. We hit it off and I felt a connection to him. And I made the effort to fly across the country and shake his hand and speak to him. And then we started doing a bunch of things together. We have a weekly show on Instagram, The Paradigm Shift, which is up to episode 118, no weeks off, which all comes
Nice.
down to consistency. And he's a guy that, he's a 55-year-old man and he's got a lot more wisdom and life experience than I do. So he's somebody I think somewhat early on that I gravitated towards just to get a little bit of perspective. I think that's really important. I think everybody should have someone or a group or a community or a mastermind. I really think everybody should choose one person and work with it and go deep with them. If I'm being honest, a lot of people like jump around and stuff like that. You should go deep with somebody. But ultimately, I always had my own vision and I'm very particular of my brand for the life of me. So I always did things my way, but I always asked and seeked guidance and perspective when I felt like it was necessary. And someone that came to mind early on was Dave. And now a lot of the people that I looked up to happen to be my friends. So they're just a phone call away now.
Yeah. So, yeah, I know that now you have your own mentorship program. And so I know mentorship is a big thing for you. So I think, as you just said, is like finding who resonates with you and the person you wish to become. And I love that you say go deep with them in particular,
Yes.
because I think that's so true. Is like we could, like, gravitate, we could learn all day long. Like, I read a lot of books, but I realized I was like, okay, I'm reading so much, but am I implementing all the things I'm reading? And it's like I was just like filling my mind with all this knowledge, which is great. I think we should all do that. But I was almost like, okay, when am I going to implement all this
Right.
knowledge and maybe go deeper with specific people that I'm resonating with? So I love that message in
Yeah,
particular.
I see that often, Erica, to be honest with you. That's one thing that I see a lot. There's, I guess you could say saturation, but there's so much to consume that I don't like to say it could be overwhelming, but like you really have to be selective. Otherwise, it can be distracting, I think is a good word. So you really want to sink your teeth into someone that resonates, someone that maybe is potentially sitting in a seat that you'd like to sit in and see what they're doing and then begin to attack. I see so many people like, and I reference this in my book, and I never publicly said this out loud, but like the self-help event junkies. Like you see them at every single event,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, what's new? And they're in the same spot, but they're just going to more events. And that's frustrating to see because implementation, right? What is all this knowledge if you're not going to execute? So I'm glad that you touched upon that.
Yeah, I think it's important. I think some of us need to like turn the mirror on ourselves and like ask the question, like, am I actually like implementing all the knowledge I'm learning, like the mindset, the tools, and all of these things, and be radically honest with yourself. So
100%.
going into your book, I was going into the chapters. I haven't got a glimpse of your book yet, but the chapters, I know what's kind of like the content. And one of the chapters is becoming available. And I like this one a lot that I want to pull out because I think so many of us, as we kind of touched on, some people will have one foot in, one foot out, and they don't go all in. They don't jump in the deep end. They're just like, and it's partly because that, the uncertainty, the imposter syndrome. So this in between. And I think sometimes that is kind of addressing in my mind, like, this is what I thought of becoming available is like, are you fully available to, be vulnerable, to jump in the deep end, to fail, to learn something along the way, and to risk being seen and all the things. So what was the chapter becoming available? Like, if you could kind of drill that home, what was the message behind that for you?
Yeah. I love that that one stuck out to you. And I can't say that there's one chapter more important than the others because I feel like they're my kids. But ultimately, one of the big concepts in the book is becoming available, right? Because as you just attested to, you can consume all the podcasts, all the books, all the events, but if you're not really available to digest it and then execute, what's the point? So when I think of like creating magic in this world, Eric, I think of this like two parts. You've heard that thoughts become things. That's absolutely true, right? But first, you have to become available to receive the thoughts that created epic things like Walt Disney or Batman or Amazon, right? You have to be able to receive that download and then the action to bring that to life. Everybody that a lot of people that come to me, like they just want the action. And I'm like, hold the phone, hold on a second. Like,
Yeah.
are you really available? And an example that I can give is like, how many times have you read a book or watched a movie for a second or third time in a different season of life? And because you were much more available the second or third time, you were able to finally consume it and then apply it. Like for me, just to give an example, The Secret, right? Now it's kind of like the gateway to all the law of attraction stuff, and you can go deeper. But I read that book years ago and I was fascinated with some of the concepts, but I didn't really understand them. I was always a mindset guy through and through. But then mid transformation in the middle of CLS, something had happened where I had a tumor in my foot when I was training for a marathon and I had a little extra time, and I believe it all happened for me, not to me. And I decided to take another stab at The Secret, but this time I was available. And what that means is I was blocking out any judgment, any interference, any distractions, and I was just connected to the source. And I really started to understand the concepts. And because I was available, now I was lit up and inspired to take action and apply it. So I can give people steps A through F, let's just say, on how to start, build, monetize your personal brand. But if someone's not really available to take that and then actually take action and be persistent and be consistent, then it's going to go for nothing. So before you want to do anything, really have like a gut check with yourself. Like, okay, I'm ready to learn. I'm coachable. I'm here to make moves. So this way you can separate yourself from a lot of those self-help event junkies that we tend to see. So it comes with being changing your awareness and your consciousness and being able to receive. And just to be clear, like being able to receive it is a muscle and a skill in itself. And if you could work on that, now you're available to consume and then apply.
I love it. And it actually reminds me, this past week, I went to a high schooler's academy. It was almost like a mini UPW in some regard. It was basically to teach them life skills, how to like cultivate relationships, how to have compassion, empathy, listen, be vulnerable, share your story. And this is all to high schoolers, so 9th through 12th grade. And I watched the room, and I was one of the mentors for the kids in our group and whatnot. And I watched the kids, and you could see who was available and who was able to digest and actually like think about the concept shared and apply it. And I watched like some of my group and some of the teenagers, I watched them transform in the 4 days. And it's because of that main concept. They were available to step into a new version, a new idea, and learn the concept shared. And it takes, it takes being kind of in that vulnerable position. Like, I don't know everything. So I'm going to, look at everything with curiosity so that I'm able to maybe think a new way. So it's really remarkable. That's a great way to start. Like, I love that's actually at the top of your book, and there's probably a reason for that because everything else needs to follow that.
And I love that word curiosity, right? That's a great trait to possess because then you're exploring, you're seeking, and you're ready to learn and dive in. So I love that you mentioned that word. That's huge.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so talking about success and all the things that is required for success. Some of these we already know. I mean, consistency and discipline, I think, are at the top tier. But what do you think is limiting people from having success? Like the three main things that you come across the most often with the people you coach and mentor?
I think so many people are waiting for the perfect time, which doesn't exist, right? And it's like it's never the perfect time to have a kid, to get a puppy, right? To start a business, for anything. But like I said, clarity follows action. You got to put yourself out there. And then ultimately limiting beliefs. I mean, I was so invested in this story, in this movie, if you will, for so long that like this was it for me. I was in a career that lost its, fun for me, and I'm stressed out and making a certain amount of money, and I see people really happy and in love. That's probably not in the cards for me. And I actually like was like feeding that story that I really thought it was true. But then it occurred to me in the pandemic when I got quiet, like thoughts are not facts. You can actually take a step back and be an observer, and the thoughts are going with or without you. So you might as well be strategic on which ones you want to give life to. So I think most people suffer from the fact that they don't believe they could do it. Why them? You mentioned imposter syndrome, and one thing that I'm trying to preach right now is let's lose the word syndrome, right? But let's not give it power. But it is there. People often get plagued with it's not in the cards for them, or who's going to want to listen to them, or it's a saturated market, whatever the case may be. So I just encourage all your listeners to understand that that's not a real story. That's a choice of a story or a movie, if you will, that you're buying into. And just as that's a choice, there's also another choice, right? So instead of thinking what can go wrong, oh, I want to start this new career, I want to pivot. What about what can go right? What happens if it pops off? And even if it doesn't work, you're going to learn something, you're going to meet some great people. And like I said earlier, if it's not the thing, maybe it'll be the thing that leads to the thing. I think most people just put this negative spin, or a lot of times I see I'm too old and stuff like that. So I would say limiting beliefs, people waiting for the perfect time, and then often something that not a lot of people want to talk about, but is like judgment from others. Like, what are people going to think? Right? Am I going to look silly? Are people going to judge me? I mean, that one for me is just so frustrating because this is your life, right? Like you got to live it, and worrying about what other people think of you is really none of our business. And I want to be responsible and say, don't care what anybody thinks about you, because as humans, we're wired to care what people think. But let's make a conscious effort to be selective and care what the right people think about us. So if people can just listen to this right now, be available to consume it, and then understand that they have a choice, they could start taking messy action. And right away, they'll start to get momentum.
Absolutely. Oh gosh, so key. A lot of this is the mindset work, right? And I know that's what you're big on, is revamping the mindset and be conscious of your thoughts and the things that run around in your head, and be able to like look at it. Like if you're looking at a paper and you're pulling out all of your thoughts, like look at it and like question it. Like, is this really the truth? Like, really, am I not capable of doing this? I've proved myself in so many ways I have been able to. And so I think it's so important to be more conscious and aware of the thoughts that are running. And it's hard when we're like, and that's why, as you during COVID, as me during COVID, like when we were able to slow down, we were actually able to like be like, something's not right here, like I gotta like change my life around, so it's yeah, that's the important work we need to do.
Something's out of alignment, right? And I like to joke, like I was living somebody else's life, and all I had to do was change everything, right? And once I had that, then I became excited, and all of a sudden, the fear of stepping into the unknown transforms into excitement, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
there's
Like
always a
with that
reframe.
yeah, that creation, that you are the creator of your life and you get to play the main role in your life. Let's talk
Ooh,
about
I love
environment, because let's talk about environment, because this is kind of plays on this, is like how much our environment plays a role in the success we will have. And I know you live by this because who you surround yourself with, but it's not just who you surround yourself with or the things around you. It's also the things you consume in your daily life. So
mhm.
I know for myself, like environment is like at the top tier of important things and how it affects my mood and my energy. So what would you suggest to somebody right now that feels they're in an environment that's not serving them to become their best self? Like if they want to step into this next version or next career or whatnot, what would be your first suggestion? And what would you recommend to somebody that actually can't get rid of maybe something toxic in their environment, meaning family or people?
I would say I would give this analogy. I would think of your life as your movie, right? And everyone else in your movie are just extras, essentially, because you're the main character of your own movie. So if you don't love the cast of characters, change the cast of characters, change the plot, right? Like you can literally change the next scene, so to speak.
Mm.
And in certain situations, you can even change the geographic location, right? So you have to look at it like, okay, this isn't serving me anymore. In fact, this environment might actually be bleeding me. And the more that I stay available for that, I'm wasting precious energy and time when I could be allocating that into something that's going to help me grow and evolve. And in regards to like, I feel like maybe what you were trying to say is like people that are in our life that maybe are toxic, whatever the case may be. All I can say is what I would highly suggest, and I understand, and I'm empathetic, this is easier said than done. You want to be around people that have a common present, but most importantly, a common future as you, and not so much as a common past. So, like for me, I don't have much in common with all the people in my past life before I reinvented myself. And I want to be very clear. It doesn't mean that I'm better than them or I'm right or they're wrong. I'm just evolving and growing, and who I'm becoming is what I'm attracting. And I just don't have so much in common with the other people. And so, look, I understand this is challenging, but you got to treat your energy and protect it with your life. You have to be so selective. I think that if certain things or certain situations are not a hell yes, then it's a hell no. And I understand not everyone's going to love that, right? Because you're going to be saying no a little bit more often. But what you're really doing is you're being authentic to yourself, right? Because if you start saying yes to things that don't serve you, you're being inauthentic and you're out of congruency, right? You're out of alignment. So I understand it's challenging, but it will get easier as you practice it. And then you'll realize how much better your life will be because you'll be consciously surrounding yourself in the right environments of people that can elevate you, that are aligned with you. So you got to start exercising the word no if it don't suit you, straight up.
Yeah, and I think a great way to notice that is how do you feel after you leave a situation? Like, do you feel elated, more joyful, more energized, or do you feel like really tired, drained? And I think when you start being more aware of how you feel, then you're like, oh, that's not in alignment with me. I think the hardest thing when it comes to family members is how to manage that. And I think the best we could do in that situation is the boundaries. Like, how do we put up healthy boundaries to, you know, be able to honor the relationship, but also honor ourselves in the same regard. It's tough, it's challenging, but I think we could all navigate it, at least to our best ability.
Yeah, and I love what you just said there. I think that's great feedback and data for your listeners. Like, if you're around someone or something, and when you leave that interaction, you feel a little deflated or depleted, that's a big difference than feeling tired, right? So, like, for example, when I used to come home from Wall Street, the job that was sucking the life out of me towards the end, and that's on me because I stayed there, but I wouldn't change a thing. At nighttime, I would feel depleted, right? Because I was like my soul wasn't lit and it was just soul sucking. And I know that feeling now. But after a long day of CLS, and no one really understands like how much I'm working right now, because this is that season of grind for me because we're building, we're growing, and it's the book launch and stuff like that. But I love this is what I asked for. But at the end of a long day, I will feel tired because of a long, great, hardworking, awesome day, not
Right.
depleted. And there's a big
Oh,
difference there.
that's
And I
so
think that's
good.
great feedback.
Yeah, that's so, so good. So when it comes to somebody, moving into something new, a lot of people are like, oh, which, like, let's just take coaching, for example. Entrepreneurship coaching, whatever. And there's a lot of avenues, right? Like, for example, we both have a podcast doing coaching, speaking, all the things, right? Some people are like, I don't know which one to do first. Like, which way do I put full force in and step fully into? Like, this is the direction to go. How do you gain more clarity on the right or the next great step to take?
Yeah, I think there's a big difference between a vision and a dream. Everybody's got dreams, but a vision is very intentional. So I can
Mm,
give you an example, and I talk about this in the book. When I was going to start CLS with no experience or anything like that, I got crystal clear on what this could look like. I wanted to be the Apple of personal development, sleek, expensive, very high credibility, right? And so I envisioned like a 10-lane highway because I don't want to just rely upon one thing, coaching, speaking. So I decided to create a 10-lane highway which had speaking, coaching, community, podcast, book deal, sponsorships, all the things. And I was like, these all sound great. And I think they're a part of the puzzle. And then I'm going to reverse engineer And okay, so what's step one to start building a personal brand so I could eventually start to fill out these lanes? So this is probably an unorthodox answer because I imagine someone listening is like, tell me what to do. Like, give me one thing to focus on. I think that you have to be very strategic on what feels good for you and what your vision is. And for me, I understood how important, especially in 2023, building a personal brand is. And for me, all the 10 lanes of the 10 lane highway individually create this big epic masterpiece that is the personal brand of CLS. And so
Yes.
I navigated that strategically, but I'm not sure one is more important than the other because I believe they all complement each other. But you do have to start somewhere. So for anyone out there that's listening right now, I would understand the difference between a dream and a vision, and I would visualize what this looks like. And you don't have to like marry that exactly. You can be adaptable, things change, but then reverse engineer and say, okay, so what is actually the first step to get me to that vision? And I would attack like that strategically and intentionally.
Whiteboard it, right? Lay it all out because, of course, if we keep it in our head, it's like you can't reverse engineer it. It's like it's going to become all confusing. Oh, it's so funny. As you were telling this story, I just have to, I have to ask you this because sometimes I'll wake up in a dream and let's say it's kind of like a horror dream, like it's not a good dream. And sometimes I'll wake up and I'm like, no, that can't be how it turns out. And so I go back trying to go back into the dream and I rewrite it. So when you're talking about like changing the characters in the scene, I'm like, do you ever do that? It sounds
Do
so
I?
silly, but I'm like, yeah.
I don't think
Have you
I've
ever
done
done
that,
that?
but that's pretty cool strategy. I'd love to tap into it, if I'm being honest.
It's just funny. Like when I'm doing like if I have a dream like somebody dies or something, I don't know, horrific, I'm like, wait, that can't happen. So I go back and like rewrite the dream. It's kind of funny, but
That's
it's
pretty
just
cool.
interesting when you it's just cool to think like that's really the truth is that we can change, the plot and the scene really just by being intentional in our actions and who we put in our life and the path we step
It,
towards. So
it
it's so
really always comes
powerful.
to a choice, Erica, right? Like there's always a
Yeah.
choice. And sometimes it's just a story that you're buying into. Can you choose a different story?
Yeah. So going to your personal brand that you've mastered so well and that you've learned a lot along the way, because of course this was something new for you as well. So I'm sure you learned a lot of tricks and traits and principles that you could really share to others. So what do you think is the key recommendation for building a personal brand? What are some like cornerstones that somebody needs to lock down and get clarity on?
Yeah, I think everybody's gonna have a different vision on what their personal brand looks like. But two things that I think are absolutely huge for those that are dabbling, two things that I learned through experience is authenticity and vulnerability, right? And all the world really wants is to see the real you. And I know this because I was holding on to something I wasn't for 35 years. I was a recovering people pleaser and I was showing up based upon how I thought the world wanted to perceive me. And I was totally wrong. Once I made the commitment that I was going to go all in CLS and burn the ships, there was no guarantee of success. But one thing that I can guarantee to myself is that for the first time in my life, I'm going to show up as the real, raw, authentic, weird, and strange Craig. I totally understand I'm not going to be for everybody. I don't even want to be, if I'm being honest. But the right people will gravitate and it'll act like a true, authentic filter, and the wrong people will go away. And at least if I fail being myself, even though I knew I wouldn't because I'm resourceful and persistent and creative. But you got to be authentic. You know this better than anyone. You look around, there's so much content to consume, there's a lot of noise and fluff out there. You have a good idea of who's authentic and who's not right away. And to me, it's so obvious. And if somebody's not authentic, I think it's such a turnoff, straight up. And like people nowadays, specifically, they want to connect with you, right? They want to be able to feel some type of energy exchange. And the best way to do that is to give them a piece of you, right? So it's like,
Mm.
I don't only showcase business stuff like I often post about my fiance or my puppy or my family or whatever it is that I'm doing because I think it's important to connect with the audience. And I think that's what creates the big separation between an audience and a community. And there's a big difference there. And then vulnerability, like it takes courage to be vulnerable, to showcase your scars or some of the things that you don't necessarily love about yourself. But that also shows confidence. Like, what's more attractive than somebody that's authentic and vulnerable, like not afraid to show up as their true self? I think that's the sexiest thing, straight up. And also, by being vulnerable, you give people an opportunity to resonate with you because, spoiler alert, nobody loves someone that's super perfect. For me, I never gravitated towards Superman. It was hard to relate to him. I was always a Batman type of cat because in my head, Batman's a human that puts on a suit and kicks ass. And that's kind of achievable, right? So you want to be able to connect with people. And that's why everybody loves like a comeback story or bouncing off rock bottom, because everybody's been through a dark season and that gives them something to connect to and sink their teeth into. So anyone building a personal brand right now, and I encourage everybody should be, or at least consider it, two things that you absolutely must implement: authenticity and vulnerability.
Amen. You know, it's I love this message. I should introduce you to him too. BC Cerna. He shared that the strongest person in the room is the vulnerable person. The person that is most vulnerable is the strongest person in the room, and you cannot be courageous without vulnerability. And so I think when you're able to see other people being vulnerable, that's when you lean into yourself more. Like it's almost like a mirror, like this person's authentic, it will help the other person be more authentic. And that's why for you, myself, like when we sense somebody's inauthentic, we're like, we instantly notice it because we're rooted in ourselves. So we can
It's
like detect
contagious.
it. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's so key. And you are so inspiring. Like everybody, of course, if you're not following Craig yet, which I'm sure you will be after this, you are like a poster child of, of somebody that's vulnerable, authentic, and really like showing up consistently, disciplined, and really, again, somebody that's reinvented himself and teaching us all the principles to get there. So one thing I would love to share. So you're so big into running marathons. I know that's one of your passions, and it's actually something
Mhm.
that you leaned into during the pandemic, if I'm correct, right?
A
Yeah.
little
So
before that,
okay.
and ironically, that was kind of the gateway for me to do some hard things, gain confidence, and be available so that when the pandemic came, I was ready to receive those downloads and take action.
Absolutely. So I'm curious, in starting that, what are some of the things that helped you excel as a man in becoming the next version of you as Craig Siegel? What has running really gifted you, if you want to say? What has it like taught you?
Great question. So two things that come to mind, are number one, it provided me an opportunity to be a gladiator in an arena. And up until that point, when I first found running, that got me out of my dark season a few years back, and it got pretty dark. You know, my pain was my pain. Everyone has their own emotional and spiritual pain. It just started to give me confidence and showcase that I could do some pretty hard things, and I can get to the other side and I can overcome and I can excel without experience, I lean in and I get better and I improve. And so that just made me so excited about life, because if I had never really ran, in fact, you couldn't pay me to run 4 years ago. Now I'm paying to run marathons, which is kind of crazy. But if I can overcome that and do it and fall in love with it, what else can I do? And then, even maybe more importantly, for me, when I'm running is when I do my best connecting. For me, that's God. And I'm able to really block out the noise, the interference, and just get quiet, connect, and be available to receive those divine creative downloads. So, like some people meditate, I imagine you're big on that. Just a prediction. For me, I was the type of cat that can really sit and meditate. So I do my moving meditations when I'm on a run, and I'm crystal clear and I get my best ideas and so forth. So it's really a double whammy, if you will. My best connecting, it's a source for me to really to lean in and connect. And then just another resource. I think everybody should have something in the calendar that scares the shit out of you, for lack of better words, something that makes you really level up, right? Because I'm running fast, like faster than I ever thought possible, but it's not really about that. It's about who I become in the process. Someone that maybe eats a little bit better, exercises more, cuts out some of the booze, and I just become a better quality human being. So running, I really gravitated towards that and everything that came with it.
I love it. And I think it teaches people a lot or it inspires at least myself to, like, I used to do rock climbing and I didn't know how to rock climb. I didn't know anything about rock climbing. And I got actually really, really good at it. And it was kind of like that thing that I'm like, I built confidence in it because I'm like, I never hit a level that it would, be the top, right? Like with rock climbing, you could always challenge yourself more. And I think even with running, it's like beating it just by 10 seconds is another new accomplishment. And so I think it's really inspiring to push yourself to do something that challenges you. And I love that you share that's also your meditation. I personally have a hard time getting into like meditating and getting a routine with that. I actually love walking meditations for me because I thrive in the outdoors in nature and I find most peace in those moments. So I think it's really, I think so many people are told like meditating. And yes, it's super powerful. And I think everybody should be doing some sort of mindfulness practice where you could go within.
You gotta.
So, but I think it's
That's
whatever your vehicle is, right? Running's
that's
for
it.
you, walking's for me.
Yes. And I
Yeah.
can't stress it enough. Like, trust me, I was not always like this. I want your listeners, I want to showcase what's possible. Like, you can change everything in a short amount of time. You're never too old. It's never too late. I was never that type of cat, but now I couldn't agree more with you. And for everybody, it's something different. Maybe you pray, maybe you meditate, maybe you do yoga, maybe you run, whatever that is for you. Find something where you can get quiet and really be available to get those downloads. And you just have to incorporate that practice into your routine to really level up and expand.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, returning back to reinvention. I believe,
Let's do it.
if this is true, that you've built a lot of relationships. And I know it honestly, it's because you've been stepping into the arena, into different arenas, right? The podcasts on stages, and you're meeting like-minded people. And so you've been able to cultivate these relationships. But it doesn't happen with everybody. It doesn't matter if somebody's in the space, they're not necessarily going to cultivate an actually authentic, rooted relationship, something that has depth per se. So what would you say to somebody that is looking to build relationships? Because I think that's a common denominator between everybody. We all want connection, but we want something of substance. And I think everybody in this world seeks it more than ever because we're more isolated than ever. So what would you advise, or what would be your recommendations to really cultivate quality relationships that are, of course, in alignment? Any recommendation or where to begin?
I'm fascinated by this question. And if it's okay with you, can I challenge you on your own show?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before I answer, and I will, and I can't wait to, I'm just curious why you think some people that are getting in the arena doing their thing aren't cultivating that depth of relationships that they desire compared to other people per se.
My first go-to when you ask that is they are lacking curiosity about the other person, meaning giving the attention and listening and actually being engaged in a conversation, like able to, I believe, and I'm sure you believe this too, is give and receive. There's this flow, like it has to be ever flowing. And if we're just take, like, oh, I want this relationship or I want to build a friendship, it's never going to happen that way. It has to be this even flow of energy. And so I think some people are there's a lot of reasons, actually, I think. And it's funny because I literally witnessed this with teenagers the last week. So I was watching how the energy in the room, I was watching how people showed up and, kind of that bounce of energy. And so when I look at it now, I'm like, I think it's because people aren't actually listening and actually present. They're thinking about the next thing. They're watching people around the room and they're not really connecting one to one. And so I think that's where I think that's the struggle, and possibly themselves just not being rooted in who they are, to be honest, like not really authentically grounded in themselves.
Yeah.
So
A
I
beautiful
hope that
answer.
answered it.
I think it's a beautiful answer. And wasn't expecting you to say one thing or the other. That was just straight off the cuff. And I was just curious. And I think that's a beautiful answer. And I think for me, people always ask me, like, one thing that I get asked often, like compared to other questions, are how do you work these how do you develop these relationships like that? It's very impressive, all these people, because they're obviously very busy. Why do
Yeah.
they want to give their time to you and stuff like that? And I think a lot of it has to do with what you just said. I'm genuinely interested. And one thing that I've gotten much better at compared to the old Craig is exercising radical humility and just being
Mm.
super humble and just trying to create win-win opportunities for everybody. And I'm a student. I'm always looking to learn. In fact, right now I'm taking a Kabbalah course, which I'm loving, and it's fun to actually be a student for a change because I'm always coaching and so forth.
Yeah.
And also, like, there's just a way that you carry yourself and you show up, and it's hard to explain or pinpoint, but when you see it, where like, oh, that cat is hungry and they're doing stuff for the right reasons, and I would love to support them or give them a helping hand or help elevate or give them a suggestion. And then there's other people that you connect with and you're just like, all right, what does this person want from me? It feels transactional. Or what are they like, what's their agenda? Right? So I like to give with no agenda. I don't expect anything in return. And I generally like to develop a beautiful, intimate rapport. So, like when I do podcasts, for example, we're building a really good reputation right now for having some of the best episodes out there. And it's not even necessarily because of the actual people, that is great too, but it's just how deep we go. And it's spontaneous and it's thoughtful and it's obvious that I prepare and do homework, and then the other person really appreciates that, just as you did for me, and I see you and I appreciate that. And things like that go a long way. And I guess in 2023, that's rare these days, sadly. So when you see it, you acknowledge it.
Yeah. So I think everybody listening right now, honestly, is like, reflect on that. Like, are you being that in your interactions? Again, radically honest with yourself, because that will make the difference. And I noticed this, I forgot if it was last year, I think it was. I noticed I was just welcomingly giving a lot. Like, how could I help you? How could I support you? And I really leaned heavy into that. It was very intentional. Again, not expecting anything in return, and it filled my cup to be able to give, honestly. But then I started to notice, like, oh, like, people, how they were showing up for me, and I'm like, wow, I felt the flow. And that's where I really understood this give and receive. And I think you did this too. Like, when somebody pays you a compliment, receive it. Receive it with open arms, and don't push it away. I think that is kind of practicing this even exchange of energy that I think takes time to practice. so
Yeah.
so Craig, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say beautifully said. And I'm actually really happy that you asked that question, because for those that are available to receive that, I think that might be one of the big pieces of the difference that makes the difference for people.
Yeah, I completely agree. Actually, that was so powerful, and just the way you shared it as well. And I think so many people could take away from that and reflect in their own lives. Okay,
Hell yeah.
so what is, like, I know where you're so, like, obviously launching the book and everything, Reinvention Formula is something super exciting, like it's birthing a baby. But what else is coming down the pipeline that you are like really jazzed about? Because you have, like you said, you have like 10-lane highways. I've seen your magic, right? In the last 2 years, I watch your magic. I'm like cheering you from afar. But what else is coming down the pipeline,
It's so funny.
if
I've
you
been
want to?
getting asked this so much lately. Everyone's like, what's next? And I'm like, can I just
Because you're
take a
like a
minute?
superstar.
Thank you. Thank you. Right now, honestly, I want to be very mindful and present. And what I'm focused on, top of mind, is to do the best job I can at the world having access to the reinvention formula. Because whether you like me or not, hopefully everybody does, but I understand I'm not for everybody. There are nuggets for everybody in any arena of life in this book that can help change your life and elevate your life for the better. And I have contrast, and I just did it. So that's what I just wanted to transfer that energy to people. That's top of mind right now. But you know me, I'm always playing chess. I'm always thinking 10
Yeah.
moves ahead. I got the whiteboard just like you.
Yeah.
I never publicly said this either, but hell, I might as well put it out there. One thing that I'm looking forward to, which isn't finalized by any means, but it's on the whiteboard, so it's probably coming up some point soon, as we like to manifest, will be a TED Talk. That's something I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And just the brand, just, people ask me like, where are you going with this thing? And I have a vision and so forth, but I say very humbly, it's exploded since inception. And a word that comes to mind is just more, extending the reach, making more of an impact, contributing a little bit more, forming great relationships, reaching more people, helping more people. So the path that we're on right now is solid. I'm cool with it. We want to extend that. And then obviously we have some surprises too. One thing that was a huge success for us was a live event that we did somewhat recently. And now we're kind of creating a hybrid with, we haven't announced it yet, but by the time the show airs, people will know, with the book signing in LA at the Grove. We're also going to combine that and kind of have CLS Live 3, a hybrid of a live event too. So live events, the TED Talk, we have a couple other surprises, sponsorships and so forth. And to be honest with you, I don't have everything figured out. And that's cool. That's part of the fun, right? I'm still figuring things out. And that's one of the great things about having a personal brand for everyone listening. Like when you have a ton of momentum, opportunities are coming to you that you didn't even see coming because people want a piece of you and they're just looking for ways to interact or do business and stuff like that. So those are some things top of mind, and I'm available for other opportunities that come my way that I might not have been expecting.
Absolutely. That's so awesome. I'm so excited for you and everybody. So he hasn't dropped the date yet for the Grove in LA, but it will be once this drops. If you're able to make it, come celebrate and grab the book. Obviously, it will be in the show notes. It is coming available August 15th. So pre-order is now. I'm super excited for, like, honestly, Craig, I'm just like, I've watched and it's miraculous. And I just want to congratulate you. And it's so inspiring for all of us, not just myself. And yeah, I'm excited for what else is to come. So, and I love watching, honestly, the other thing that you've even included in your book is your love story and your fiance. And you're very, like you said, you share your life. And I think that's what people connect to. And I encourage people to share their life because it's the human connection is what we want. We don't need like the highlight reel. We don't need, like all the business stuff necessarily. I think people just really want to connect.
Thank you so much for saying that. I adore you. It's cool because, I'm going 100 miles an hour, but you brought me back when we were chatting before we record, and we have been on this journey together, right? And we don't always talk, but we're kind of doing our things. But it's beautiful to reconnect and recatch up. And I have a ton of love and respect for you, and I'm excited and honored to do this thing called life with you, straight up.
Thank you. I so agree. I appreciate you. So let's just wrap it with a bow. And I'll ask you the question I asked last show as well. So let's see what you come up for this time around. So if you were to share a piece of wisdom, a life lesson you've learned in your journey, in your vast journey, and you just feel it's something everybody, the world needs to hear right now, you're on a loudspeaker, shout it out, and why?
Can I give two for the price of one?
Yes,
Number
please
one,
go for it.
Number one, thoughts are not facts. Okay, so whatever's going on up there, they're going on without you. You get to make them real by giving them life. So if you don't like the thoughts that are taking up real estate inside your head, choose a new, more empowering thought. And the second one is all of us are here for a big reason. I don't think that's an opinion. I think it's our responsibility to identify what that is and lean in. And I encourage everybody who's not in alignment or is not waking up excited for the most part on a day-to-day basis, but you feel that tug at your heart, your soul, there's something there that you've been denying. You have to cultivate 20 seconds of courage and lean into it and explore it and just see where it goes. Because like I said a couple times on the show, if it's not the thing, it'll be a thing that leads to the thing. But most likely, doors will open up, opportunities will present themselves, and you'll become a better person in the process. But on the flip side, if you don't lean in, you will regret it for the rest of your life.
So good. So good. Perfect way to end this episode, Craig. It's been such an honor. Please let us know how we could best support you. I assume buy the book.
Yeah, I would say grab your copy of the Reinvention Formula. We have a launch team too. I'm not sure when this will drop, but if you go to the reinventionformula.com, you can, if you do the pre-order and you redeem it, you get access to our virtual event. It's the biggest one we've ever thrown. It's going to be the week of. Come say hello. We have the CLS membership community, masterminds, all that stuff. If you like inspirational text, you can shoot us a text. Text 917-634-3796. Text the word Erica, so I know you heard it from this conversation. download the podcast, the sales experience, and just come say hello. I love to connect straight up.
Awesome. So appreciate you. Thank you for making the time, and thank you for all you're doing and just showing up as you are, like just raw and real and ready to serve. So I just appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Erica. Love every second of this.